Hi, my name is Christina Elizabeth, and welcome back to my channel, Into the Heart, where we talk about life, healing, the journey, all of that good stuff. We're here to talk about it. So I was going over where I wanted to start, and of course, the way all good things go, I received a message or kind of like a little hint from Spirit. The other day I was riding down the highway, and mind you, I've been here for like a year and a half now. I was sitting in traffic on a road that I drive all the time, but because I was sitting in traffic today, that particular day, I noticed a Seventh-day Adventist church. And it caught my eye and it caught my attention because I've driven up and down this road hundreds of times and I've never noticed it before. And it was also my first time seeing a Seventh-day Adventist church while I've been here in Texas. I think that's strange, but I got to thinking about it, and when I think about my own personal story, so much of my life revolved around church, particularly being a Seventh-day Adventist. And I know that not a lot of people know about Seventh-day Adventism. A lot of us, especially us millennials, we did grow up in the church in different denominations. I was definitely a church girl for many years. But being a Seventh-day Adventist was its own special niche of a story, because if you know, you know. And I felt like that is such a great place to start sharing more about myself and more about my journey, because really it all started for me at the church. So just to give a little background on the church real quick, keep it real brief, it is a Christian denomination that was founded in the mid 1800s. They followed mostly teachings from this prophetess Ellen G. White that had a lot of writings and prophecies and things like that. That's where they got a lot of their teachings from, and of course the Bible. The biggest thing about being a Seventh-day Adventist, we went to church on Saturday. Saturday was the Sabbath where we rested. It was considered from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. Sundown to sundown was considered one day. On the Sabbath, we rested. We went to church and we fellowshiped, but we really weren't supposed to do much else. No working, no cleaning, no cooking, none of that. Saturdays was for resting, fellowship, and going to church. They have a really big health message. So they, at least in my experience, they really taught about clean and unclean foods, what you can and can't eat. A lot of Seventh-day Adventists tend to be vegetarians or vegan. When I was in boarding school, and before then, of course, I was a vegetarian for many years. While I was at school, they served only vegetarian in the cafeteria. So I was definitely a part of that. So where I grew up in Alabama, there was really two conferences. There was the Gulf States Conference and the South Central Conference. And I was a part of the Gulf States Conference, which was the more conservative side. And really, the South Central Conference was the black side. They were all a part of the Seventh-day Adventist umbrella, but there was definitely a distinct difference. So for me, I was in the white side, basically. What other way is there to put it? Another really big part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church was their message about Jesus' second coming, the book of Revelation, and the end times. They had a lot of seminars and a lot of conferences and things going over all of that. But one of the things that planted a seed in my mind that was like a red flag for me at a really early age pretty much was that, yes, they have a big mission on how they're spreading the word, teaching people about the Bible and being a Seventh-day Adventist, the seventh day, and all of that stuff, their message. But if you don't hear it or you don't receive the message, then you go into hell. Or when Jesus comes back and he blows the trumpet and you're not a Seventh-day Adventist, then that's it. So you mean to tell me all the people that ever existed before Seventh-day Adventism was established, they going to hell too? Or what about the people that are like other religions that they just got it all wrong? Like everybody else in the world got it wrong and we the only ones that got it right? That never really sat right with me. I didn't really like that. I wasn't buying that. There was something in my spirit that just planted the seed and I put it aside for later. That was the biggest thing I think about the message for the church, because don't get me wrong, there's definitely a lot of truths that they do preach, and all the things that they taught us about the end times, we living in it. There's a lot of stuff that they taught, and the symbolism in the book of Revelation and everything, they study that really heavily, and they got a lot of that right. I'm not gonna hold you. A lot of that stuff still rings true. I didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's definitely a lot of truth to some of that, but some about that didn't sit right. So those are the major points or the major beliefs of being a Seventh-day Adventist. So now, I joined the church with my mother when I was about 7 or 8. I have my own conspiracy theory about why we even joined that church in the first place, but I guess ultimately everything happens for a reason. Now, 90% of my early childhood, a lot of things happened to me, for me, whatever, however you want to say it, but it involved people from this church. Now, a lot of people, if you don't know me, a lot of people who do, but if you don't know me, I ended up living with a Caucasian family that I met at the church. I met Nan and Grampy at that church with my mom when she was still alive. We started going there, and that's where we met them. So when my mother got sick, I ended up being, long story short, for another story for another day, but that's how I ended up with that family in the first place, because I met them in the church. I went to the church school. They had grade school where it was only 6 of us. For years, it was a couple of years, there was only 6 students in the whole school, but I went to the boarding school, Bass Memorial Academy, which is located in Lumberton, Mississippi. It was a Seventh-day Adventist boarding school where we lived, we went to school, we played sports, we did everything there. And I had a blast until I didn't. But that's another story for another day. But just know, I went. And then after high school, I wanted to go to Oakwood, which is an HBCU that's located in Huntsville, Alabama, that of course is part of the South Central Conference. I almost went to South University, that's up there, that's the other Adventist school, but of course in the other conference side. I didn't go to either. It didn't work out for me to go to either school, but that's also another story for another day. So another way that this church has really influenced my life, my longest standing friends that I have now, I met them in the church. I met them when I was 13, 14 years old, and we're still friends to this day. Of course, Nan and Grampy, that's a long story, but I met them in the church. When I left from living with her, Nan, and the kids, I went and stayed with another black family that was in the church. And when none of that went very well, I ended up living in another situation. I was staying with my aunt at the time, and even though she wasn't a Seventh-day Adventist, she wasn't a part of the church or whatever, I would still go to church. So even into my adulthood, this is after high school and everything, my friends and I, we would go to church. Like our Sabbath school teacher, she would come pick us up and stuff like that and give us a ride and bring us back to the house, because of course I wasn't driving at the time, but I was still a church girl. And being involved in something like that for so long, and looking back on it, I have so much church trauma. I got so much church trauma. Some of the best people that I've ever met, my longest and closest friends, of course, I met in the church, but some of the worst stuff that's happened to me in my life came from people that I met and knew in that church. So now fast forward, about 24 years old, and I was still going to the church off and on, but this one particular Sabbath, I was with my homegirl and her family, and we went to church. Now, I don't remember why. I think at the time I hadn't been there for a while, but I was visiting my friend, my homegirl. They knew I was pregnant or whatever, but no, I hadn't been to the church in so long, but I went with them. And I remember going to the church that day, first trimester pregnant, so nobody knew, but it was something about when I walked into those walls of that church, it was something in my spirit that said, no, I'm done. Definitely something in my spirit that told me this is not it. I'm not coming back here. I had too many memories in this church, too much drama, too much hurt, too much pain, and I knew that I didn't want to bring my son up in that. I just knew that it wasn't it for me. So I promised myself that was the last time I'd ever show up in that building. And I have not been back since. I've tried other churches. I've gone to other denominations and stuff like that, and it just wasn't it for me. It just stopped being it for me. And I continued on with life. I went through the journey of becoming a mother. I had my son when I was 25 in 2018. So I'm working, living, doing the best that I can with what I got. And I think back on that time, and it was a dark time for me. It was hard. It was tough. And I hit rock bottom in 2019. 2019, I know for a lot of us, was a really pivotal year. There was a lot of stuff that was happening. A lot of things was leading up to this breaking point in my life. But 2019, it was the straw that broke my back. I was done in 2019. My PTSD was an all-time high. I had like complex PTSD, anxiety off the chain, triggered all the time, and I needed therapy. I just was lost. I was going through postpartum depression. I had left my job at the doctor's office and I was working a new job. I had reconnected with my brother, which is a whole nother story for another day. But I just remember in 2019 there was a turning point where I said, I can't do this anymore. I was sitting in my cubicle in my new job, fighting back tears, just triggered, silently crying, just tears pouring down my face. I'd be driving. My road rage was just terrible road rage. And I remember it was one day very specifically. I was riding in my car. Somebody had swerved or something. And it just, I remember my mouth being wide open and knowing that I could feel my throat screaming, but I was screaming at the top of my lungs, but yet I couldn't hear it. And I was banging on the steering wheel and tears pouring down my face. I was just so angry, just shaking. And it was somewhere in the back of my mind, I could hear my son crying. My son was in the back seat, like, what is going on? And once I heard him, and it kind of snapped me back, this isn't good. So I made it back to the house. Get him settled away. And I remember just sitting there like, I can't do this. I'm not okay. This isn't okay. And I did not know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't have anybody else to talk to. At the time, I had no family. I was in a very unhealthy relationship or non-relationship with my son's father at the time. It just was a lot. And I did not have the tools that I needed. And I remember it was just one day, that day I prayed. I'm like, God, please, I can't do this anymore. I'm unhappy. And I know I can't be like this for my child. It's different now when you have a child. At least it was for me. It's different. That motherhood hit me in a way, and I realized, Christina, you were genuinely unhappy. And the love of my son sparked something different inside of me, but it let me know, like, I'm not okay with how I'm functioning right now. So I prayed. I was a church girl, so I knew that God had not forsaken me. I knew that I wasn't where I was or where I came from, because at this point, I had a roof over my head. I was working. I was taking care of myself, and I had a baby boy who was happy and healthy. You know what I'm saying? That was so much more than I ever could have expected of myself. So I knew I was okay. I wasn't where I was, but there was something that just was not right. And when I prayed to God, please show me, help me, just something, please. I knew in my heart of hearts, I wasn't going to go back to fighting the church. I wasn't going to do that. But God showed up for me where I was in that moment. And God answered my prayers, but not all at once. God did not answer my prayers all at once. It wasn't like a big light beaming down and something falling into my lap or my life changing the next day. No, that's not how God answered my prayers. So a seed planted in my heart, I needed to start back writing. So when I was younger and I was going through all the stuff that I was going through, right, I was writing. I used to write all the time. And it had been years and years and years. But when I was in this space, I was like, okay, I'll start back writing. I got to do something to get it out. I don't really have anybody else to talk to. So just start. So I started with writing a couple of things on my phone, in the notes, which I still have and I will be sharing. Because when I went back to read it, I was like, damn, this is crazy. crazy. But I ended up buying a journal, and I started writing, and I've been writing ever since. We're going into 2025, and I've been writing consistently since 2019. So I have 4, 5, 6 books at this point, because God did not answer my prayer all at once. God answered my prayers by unfolding this slow peeling back of the layers, this road that materializes before me, in the people that I've met, in the things that I've read and that I've learned, and the places that I've gone, and the experiences that I've had. All the experiences I had before, how I had to learn, God gave me slowly but surely has given me all the tools that I need. And that has been my biggest journey in moving from being ultra conservative, super religious, super controlled, all that church drama and everything. And not saying that there aren't good people in the church, because please, okay, there's good people, there's good and bad people everywhere. And what I've learned since not being in the church, I have more respect for it, and for the people who are in the church and that do walk in their light and their truth. I understand, and I have respect and balance for all walks of life, because since I left the church and once I started praying and I started doing research, I was just reading. I was hungry for information. So I did research on Hinduism, Buddhism, African spirituality, of course, other Christian denominations. I read it all. I just soaked it all up. And for me, the biggest takeaway from everything that I've read about all different types of religion and all this information that's out there is that all paths lead to the same divine, to the same God, to the same source. It's just whatever way works best for you, that leads you to your higher self, and that leads you closer to God, because God is everything. The same God that is in the pew and in the church for some people is the same God that's in the trees and in the flowers and in the plants. So it's literally whatever, you got to find what works best for you. But this is my story, and this is how it all happened for me. And I have so much respect for the way that everything unfolded, because I have no hate or no disregard for religion. I just know that being in the church all the time, the way I was, is just not for me. And I have not chosen to conform or label or jump into any other type of organized religion, because one thing that I will say is that I realized a lot of people from church that grew up in church jump straight into African spirituality and to these other things, which there's nothing wrong with it. I have respect and shout out to y'all. I get it. God, to me, is so much bigger than just one thing or just one cookie cutter, So now here I am on this path of just doing the best that I can with what I got. And one of the biggest prayers that I prayed at the time when I was at rock bottom is just show me who I am. Help me understand my truth, my power, what is really going on here. How does any of this really work? I started studying energy and of course the chakras, and then I got into astrology and all of these things, the astrology, the tarot, crystals, all of the sage, cards, whatever. All of these things to me are just tools. They tools that point you right back to myself, my own intuition, my own direct line to God, how the divine speaks to me. It's not about the crystals. It's not about the cards and the tarot. It's not even about the pen to the paper. It's really about here, the line that leads from source directly into my heart, and what I choose to do with that gift and that information that God gives me. Up until this point, I've used it to improve my own soul, my own energy, to heal all of the trauma, and not just church trauma, family, relationships. I had a lot of work I had to do on myself to become a better person, to heal all the trauma, the victimhood, all of the why it's me. I've gone on a really intense journey. I did the work because I understood that once I asked God to show me who who I am and to help me, just help me, please. He gave me such a beautiful understanding more of who I am as a soul and who I am as a spirit. And he has given me a gift because I was willing to do the work. So that's why I'm here today with the light that I have been cultivating in my soul. And that's why I'm here to share and to let other people know that there are those of us out here who've gone through it. That church trauma, specifically in this story, talking about church trauma and being in the most. Any of us that have been in that Seventh-day Adventism, it's not for the weak. It's a lot of truth to it. You know what I'm saying? They hold a lot of truth, and there's a lot of beautiful words and beautiful things that are a part of it. There are a lot of things that I still see and hold true to today. So I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We take the parts that we keep and we get rid of the parts that don't resonate with us. I invite you to share in the comments if you have ever been a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, or your own experience and your own history with being a church goer, or if you stayed in the church, or why you stayed, or why you've left. Please, I'd be very interested to hear more down in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe. I will be uploading and sharing more of my writing, especially the writings that I've done right around this time where I started, and just really diving deep into how I started to unpack some of that really hard stuff. That's what we're here for, is to get deep and get into the heart of everything.